John here from Great Lakes Country, and today we're going to be cleaning a very rusty cast iron skillet with a process called electrolysis. I got this little cast iron skillet from an estate sale for like $1, and it's definitely seen better days. I think it was sitting in someone's garage for probably about 20 years, and most people would look at this and say that that is unusable. But I've refurbished a lot of cast iron cookware, and normally I do it with the quote brute force method, which is basically a wire wheel on an angle grinder and all other manner of scrubbing and scraping. But I've been wanting to try this process that I learned about called electrolysis, wherein you use electricity and a solution made with water, stick the pan in there, and just let it do its work, using practically magic to remove the rust from it. Now, I've seen a lot of demonstrations of this to varying degrees of success, but really there's no substitute for trying it myself. So in this video, I'm going to be making a simple electrolysis tank and seeing if I can't get most or all of the years of caked up rust off of this skillet. So here's the gist of how it works. We get ourselves some sort of vessel, in this case, some kind of plastic storage tote. Then we'll suspend our rusty cast iron into this container. And at the same time, we need what we'll call some sacrificial steel. In this case, I'm going to use some cleaned rebar. Some of that rebar will also go into the container. Now, once we fill this container with our liquid medium, which is really just a solution of water and sodium carbonate, aka washing powder, I'll connect one electrode to the pan and another electrode to the sacrificial metal, turn on my power supply, and it'll start doing its thing. And after thinking about exactly how I wanted to arrange the sacrificial metal in here and thinking that more metal is going to be better because there'll be more surface area for the rust to essentially be attracted to, I decided to make just a little simple frame out of some rebar by welding it together in this shape that'll sort of just stand there in that container, and the pan can kind of just hang down in between all that. So just a little bit of welding will make this little structure. Nothing fancy. I'm not really taking any special care in how I'm doing this, just trying to get those pieces connected together. All right, let's get this container filled with some water. Okay, we've got 7 gallons of water in this container, and admittedly, this isn't the greatest container for this. It's kind of flimsy. I'm a little worried about just the weight of the water, flexing it too much and maybe breaking it, but I did want to use a mostly transparent vessel, at least for the sake of this demonstration in this video. But anyway, we're gonna make it work. We've got our water in. The next thing we need to do is stir in some of this stuff. Commonly sold under the label of washing soda, it consists of only one ingredient, and that's something called sodium carbonate. And this is going to be and I don't think this is the technical word for it, the catalyst that's going to let the electrolysis work with this water when we start putting electricity through it. So for this, I need 1/2 of a cup of this powder for every 5 gallons of water. I've got exactly 7 gallons in here, so that means I need just shy of 3/4 of a cup of this powder. I'll just get it all stirred in there as best I can. It's immediately making everything look pretty cloudy, and it's probably going to defeat the entire purpose of using this transparent container, but oh well, we're gonna do it anyway. And wouldn't you know it, I ended up making this frame thing too big, and it won't even fit in my vessel now. So I'm pretty sick of messing with this thing at this point. So we're just gonna improvise and put one little section of it in there, because after all that, that's about all I have the patience for. And just to make sure that it can't really tip over or anything, I'll add a couple little teeny tiny bungee cords just because I want it to stay put. And this isn't really going to be necessary because these 2 vertical pieces of rebar are connected by that horizontal piece, just to make absolutely sure I've got a great connection. When I hook the electricity up to this, I'll just wrap a little bit of this copper wire around the tops, and that's where I'll end up clipping my alligator clip to anyway. As for how to suspend that pan in there, well, we're going to just use a little piece of wood with a little bit more of that wire. So simply enough, I'll run some wire through the hole in the handle here, and then we're just gonna give that a few twists to make sure that it's suspending just right. I do want this pan to be totally submerged, but it's also very important that it's not touching any of that rebar. So I'll just sort of get it positioned how I think I can, and trim off some excess here, and we're just about ready to go. Now here I've got a little adjustable DC power supply, and I think I paid about 35 or 40 bucks for this thing on Amazon. Now I know that an old way that people commonly did this electrolysis was to use an old style car battery charger before the modern circuitry and safety features sort of prevented you from being able to use it for this purpose. But anyway, there's a lot of different things you can change as far as settings on this. But in all my research about what the optimal setting is for doing electrolysis on this scale, I'm gonna be setting this thing to 8 volts at 3 amps. And these little knobs are a little finicky. They're a little touchy, but we can get there. That's as close to 3 amps as it'll let me get, so I'm calling that good. It's probably impossible to see, but there's a small indicator next to these letters CC, which means that we're in the constant current mode, and that's what we want. So let me turn the power back off for a minute. We can get our leads hooked up. Negative, positive. Now we're going to connect the positive cable to the little wire that I've got going to my sacrificial rebar. And in this case, this will be known as the anode. And I'll take the negative and attach it to the wire that's going to my cast iron pan, AKA the cathode. Now I'll just turn on the power supply and I guess cross my fingers that I did everything right. And after a little while, I will expect to see some action inside of there, a little bit of bubbling, starting to see some impurities pulling away from the cast iron and moving towards that rebar. Again, with this cloudy liquid, it's probably gonna be a little difficult to show that on camera, but I'm gonna do my best. And we're gonna check in on this every once in a while and see how it looks, see if it's doing anything different. Like I said, this is a slow process. I could expect to let this thing sit here and run for a day before it's done pretty much as I think it can do. But anyway, let's skip ahead maybe like an hour and see if there's anything to see. So it's been about 45 minutes and I ended up messing with some of the settings. I wasn't really seeing any kind of activity in the water, and I did a little more quick reading, and I decided to crank the voltage up pretty much as high as it'll go. Now again, it's impossible to see the little LED indicator next to the CC for constant current, but you definitely want that to be the case. You want the constant current. So what I have to do is when I turn the voltage all the way up, I then have to start dialing back the amperage just until I see the LED indicator move from CV to CC. And that's where I've decided is my sweet spot right now. And I don't remember where I originally read to keep the voltage at about 8, but when I went and did some more reading just now, I'm seeing plenty of people cranking that up to as high as the power supply will go. And as long as these wires don't start to feel overly warm or hot, I think I'm gonna be in perfectly fine shape. And what I'm noticing is that there's a fair amount of bubbling and fizzing going on now to the wire that is holding up that cast iron pan. That's exactly what I want to see. And then I can kind of see through the wall of this container that there's bubbles starting to form all over the rebar. So that means that there's definitely some electrolysis action happening between my pan and my rebar. So there's really not anything to do right now except just let it keep working and check back on it in a little while. I'll probably let it go another hour or two and we'll check back in. All right, the electrolysis process has been going on for just about 2 hours now. And I gotta say, there is a lot of gunk and rust and crud floating around in that water. I'm still getting lots of good bubbling action, although it's probably not that easy to see on camera anymore the more murky this water gets. Just look at all that foam and grime that's come off of that skillet. I'm gonna shut that power supply off for just a minute because this is what I really want you to see. Like I said, this has been in there about 2 hours, and already look at how much of that rust has come off of there. You could not see black whatsoever when I first started this. And sure, it's still pretty yucky looking, but I can see black all over this entire skillet. And just for reference, here's what it looked like in that video intro when I first showed this pan to you. Anyway, I'm just gonna let this keep cooking away, so to speak, for I don't know, another couple hours and see where we're at that time. Just look how yellow and gross that water is. I've never been so excited about some disgusting brownish yellow water before. Anyway, yeah, we'll check back in I guess a couple more hours and see how much cleaner that skillet has gotten. Okay, here we are about 6 hours in, and this water is looking absolutely disgusting. There's a thick foam just sitting on top of most of it. There's been pretty consistent bubbling action basically the entire time that this has been going. You can see the water is completely brown and basically nicotine colored compared to when I first started. But the real question is, how does the pan look? There's definitely still a lot of crud on there, but look at it. It looks like it would slough right off if I touched it. Look at this stuff on the side over here. It just peels right off. Look at that. I am really impressed with how well this has been working. I'm sort of tempted to take this out now and give it a quick wipe down and see what I'm dealing with. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to use this box here to try to contain as much of this crap as possible as it comes off of here. Look at that. There's practically no more rust that's fully stuck on there. I think this backside here maybe needs a little bit more, although I'm not quite sure if that's all rust or if that's just baked on grease and crud from the generations. Really not sure. Either way, I can't believe that this is the same skillet that I started with. I think I will end up still having to go at it a little bit with a wire brush just to really take care of some of this extra stubborn grime here around this bottom edge. But honestly, I don't know that there's a lot more that electrolysis tank can do for this pan. There's not really any more visible rust on it. It's really just this sort of dull surface on most of it and this extra thick patina of crud on the back. The handle's looking pretty darn good. At this point, I'm thinking just a quick scrub with a wire brush, and this thing might be just about ready to start building up a new season. So you know what? I think that's what I'm gonna do. But before I do that, you need to see what the rebar looks like that was under the surface of that water. Look at how much of that crap drifted over to that and stuck to that metal. That's exactly what it was supposed to do. And I can't help but wonder if the more sacrificial steel you use, the faster or better it'll work. I'm not sure, but it sure makes me want to experiment with it a bit. Anyway, I got to figure out how to go about emptying this nasty, rusty water in a way that's not going to cause a huge mess and disaster. So let me work that out. And there we have it. I did just go ahead and end up using a wire wheel on an angle grinder because, well, honestly, that just makes such quicker work of a task like this. But it really didn't take any kind of effort or pressure, really just a once over with that wire wheel. And this thing is taken all the way back down to its original metal. There are some pock marks in here that have a little bit of rust still in them that I can't get all the way down to the bottom of. But I'm not really worried about those at all. All in all, I've got a beautiful fresh surface to work with to start building back up a brand new seasoning. And this isn't really a cast iron seasoning video, so I'll just go ahead and skip all that in this particular video. But we will jump to the end when this thing is beautiful and seasoned and black and ready to cook with. And here's the finished skillet, all seasoned up. I did 6 coats of avocado oil. It's looking great. I can't say whether or not it's got a perfect non-stick finish until I try cooking something with it, but it's looking pretty good. This old skillet is definitely kind of beat up. I don't know if someone was using it to hammer in nails at some point or what, but well, I expect it was probably just kicking around in someone's shed or garage or basement or something for probably about the last 30 years. But anyway, I'm super happy with how that electrolysis tank worked, and I'm pretty excited to use electrolysis again for some of my other cast iron. I've got a bit of a collection of old, completely rusty cast iron cookware that I've accumulated over the last few years. Now, like I said earlier, for the sake of this demonstration, I wanted to use kind of a transparent tank, but that relatively small plastic container isn't really going to be ideal and pretty much only worked for a pan about as small as this one. So I'm certainly going to need a much bigger vessel for all of my much bigger cast iron. That's perfectly okay. I'll probably end up using an old Rubbermaid storage tote or something like that, or maybe even a an old plastic water barrel, something to that effect. Of course, the bigger the tank, the more water I need, the more washing powder I need, and the more tricky it'll be to empty and then clean out, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Not that I have a big frame of reference for comparison, but I really like that little power supply. It worked perfectly. It never got overly hot. Those wires never got more than, I'd say, warm. Anyway, if you want to try this for yourself and you're interested in seeing the exact little power supply that I used, I'll put a link to it in the video description below. Not very expensive, just got it on Amazon. Anyway, I guess that's about it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the electrolysis process as interesting as I did. In any case, be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future DIY, experiment, and cast iron videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.